Hello, I'm so excited to welcome Payal to Sustainability Chats with Friends. We met, I think, at the Conscious Fashion Collective webinar, and then just got chatting online and realized that we had loads of interesting intersection points. And so, yeah, we're here today to talk about sustainability in fashion. Do you want to just share a bit about your background briefly and where you are and how you got into this space?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for introducing me. And hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here just to have some fun, engaging, deep conversations. So, my background has always been in luxury fashion, and that's what kind of I did in my early 20s as well. And the two intersections that I always stayed in was luxury fashion and e-commerce. I got to be part of the e-commerce universe very young. And as we grew older, we all, I think at some point came to realize that fashion is harmful for the environment. We all had our own journeys around it. Mine was more related to me becoming vegan at that point and understanding the impacts of health and then moving on to fashion. So I think there came a point in my life, this was around 2016, where I said, hey, I'm working for luxury fashion. I'm selling this narrative, whereas in reality, I'm not believing in it. And there's kind of a complete disconnect with it. So I went on to, of course, Google everything, learn from the internet first. That was my first point because I was living in Dubai at that point and there was no one around me that was interested in this topic. So I went on a deep, deep hole there and I somehow managed to launch my own brand, which was very artisanal focused. And during that 2-year journey, I basically learned hands-on about what is greenwashing because I saw a lot of it happen around me, even within my business, because what the reality was different from what we are. And then, yeah, long story short, I left the brand because I wanted to create a bigger impact. And now, similar to Isabel, I also run my own consulting and we can talk about it in a way. It's what we do, but that's basically how I landed here.
Awesome. So cool. That's funny that you found it to your lifestyle first, then went to your job and were like, wait, how do I make it more sustainable in your job? I feel like for me, it was the other way around. I was like trying to make clothes more sustainable and then that trickled into my lifestyle. I love hearing about how people figured out sustainability and stuff. But I'd love to talk about your artisanal background as well, because I know that we had a call the other day about helping brands who have artisanal stuff sell to not a mass market, but like a market outside of where it's produced.
Yeah. So being Indian, I think I was just influenced a lot with artisanal products growing up. We see that in our culture a lot. Our grandmas knitting, artisanal Indian wear, like rework and design. And I don't know if it was Chanel or Dior, one of the shows they'd done in Mumbai, one of the brands, they also used weavers who were doing traditional Indian wear work. So there's a lot of intricate work in the artisanal space in India that we've seen growing up. So I was aware about it, but I got disconnected when I moved to luxury fashion.
Right.
And then I learned about sustainability and circularity, and I realized that, hey, a lot of the practices that we were doing were regenerative. It wasn't even just sustainable, it was regenerative because we were using what was in the nature and not destroying it, just using whatever was left and then building on it. And also providing livelihood to certain women that were disadvantaged or couldn't work. So there was a lot of ecosystem work that was going on. And when I built this brand is when I realized more deeper about it. So I had suppliers. So I was doing basically handmade bags, which were made from natural fibers, and then also artisanal jewelry. And then I had suppliers in Thailand, Bangladesh, and India. So the only suppliers I visited were in India, of course, so that was easier access for me. But when I went and I saw and I understood, it just unraveled something different in me that, wow, we can have such beautifully created products that take 60 hours to build. One of my bags took 60 hours to build. And that to me is luxury than what we were considering luxury based on a social status.
Yeah, 100%. That's so interesting. That reminds me. So I was at the Future Fabrics Expo in London these last 2 days, and one of the talks was about luxury fashion. And Arizona Muse was there, and I don't know if you know her work. Yeah. Activist, has dirt charity and everything. And she was saying that her definition of luxury is something that's beautiful. And to her, beauty these days doesn't include a supply chain that includes abuse and poor pay and terrible quality of life and everything. And I think that hearing that's kind of similar, like luxury is like beautiful items that are regenerative and that are like made in a sustainable way, or even in this case, like a regenerative way. And like that beauty shines through as well.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And also with this consumer behavior study that I've done, a lot of Gen Zs have this similar mindset that you just mentioned about that.
Interesting. Okay.
We don't care as much about social status. They don't care as much, but they care about inclusivity, about beauty, uniqueness, and integrating all of these values. And that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out with the artisanal space is how can we make this space more lovable with the community, whereas it's kind of imbalanced right now. And a lot of the practices and traditions are dying. A good example here is also natural dyeing. We had a lot of natural dyeing homemade products growing up. But now we're trying to regenerate that into a mass market. And there's so many challenges that's come into space. One with costing, one with seasonality, because we need to work with nature with such products. It can't be fast weeks made.
Yeah. Could you elaborate more on what you mean by lovable to the community?
Yes. So a lot of people in the world right now do not value artisanal products as much as they do because mostly one, we're price conscious individuals. Second, we care about social status. So we go for brands that are the Chanel's, the Hermes Birkin bag, or any of such brands versus a product that took X hours to make, is regenerative, it's supporting a livelihood, it's an ancient tradition.
Right.
It's created by someone who you're supporting. It's a whole ecosystem. So it's basically finding a way to change the narrative on artisanal products and bring them to be more beautiful.
Yeah.
So there are very few brands who are able to intersect this because I also think that from my research, people do relate artisanal product to beauty, but are artisanal products actually that unique or beautiful? A lot of them maybe not. And that comes to a larger narrative on funding, design, people putting their eyes on changing that industry.
Right. That is interesting. In what way do you think that it's, I don't remember the word you used, but it was something along the lines of generic. Like in what ways do you think that the designs are not that beautiful? I think you said not that beautiful, or not that it was something like that. You said something like that. In what ways do you think that they're not that?
Yeah. So I can give you a personal example. So when I was designing these artisanal bags for my brand, I wanted, because I worked in luxury, I wanted it to look beautiful because I understood that people value beautiful products. And so do I, by the way. I mean, I'm sure you too. We want to have like
moment. You want to look beautiful. You buy things to look like more beautiful, I guess, or practicality, but she mixed both.
Yeah. So I went on this journey to try and find ways to iterate this product to help these designer cooperatives in India go and sit with them and say, hey, I want to design like this. How can you integrate different materials? How can you integrate different techniques to do? But I hit dead end at least in 20 places.
Oh, really? Wait, in what way? Were they just like not willing to compromise the way in which they made the designs?
So they, one, lacked the mindset. Second, lacked the skills. Third, lacked the funding.
Okay.
Fourth, I was not able to get them a higher MOQ. So they didn't have a big incentive. So these were kind of 4 reasons that I found out. But at least in India, there are some places in Mexico, I would say, and some Native American places that there's still more innovation happening in fabric sector, even in Africa with larger cooperatives around there.
Yeah.
But still, I would say we're looking at material innovation. We're not looking at innovating from artisanal space as much.
Interesting. So I see what you mean. How do you think, like, what would you, if you could like picture the future, what would you want the artisanal space to look like? Or what do you think would be cool?
So a friend yesterday shared with me a collab that Tassi had done with a Palestinian American designer who's working for this brand called Artisan Project. Okay. So they had mixed, I think they were based in Morocco. They made upcycled rugs out of Tassi shirts that were, of course, upcycled. And then they used wool. I don't know if it was regenerative wool, not knowing the details yet, but wool. And then third was using these traditional techniques and creating rugs. So that's what I want with the artisanal space, to have tradition blended with modernity and circularity. I think that would be a perfect intersection in today's world. And I think that's Tassi collab, from what my friend said, sold out.
Oh, really?
Day one. So
it would be nice to have that as like its own little universe, you know, like still have like the traditions and all of that, and then have like this like kind of cool blend. That would be really fun. Did you see, I think that I'm not 100% sure if this was the brand name, but I think it's something like She Made Me, or like Made for a Woman, or something like that. And they just did a collab with Chloe, and it's all of this hand woven, really beautiful, like raffia material, and they make these really stunning bags and crocheted pieces and garments, and it's stunning. Did you see that?
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah.
I have.
Okay. But I thought that was quite an interesting marriage between luxury and artisanal pieces as well.
Yeah, I would say exactly. You're touching the right point that I want to make as well. That I think we're consumers, we're used to beauty. So we want more innovation, newness into the space. And this is kind of how we can do it with keeping circularity at the focus and not as a sideline. We're reusing what's available, but we're also continuing to innovate, or we're introducing newer fabrics, next-gen materials into the mix. But we're supporting a dying industry. We're keeping the traditions alive, but we're keeping on innovating with how the world's moving. And I think that's what resonates with me as a human being as well, that we, over the years, have become more and more addicted to technology, but we're all learning the balance of how to live with technology, but also have our spiritualness or wholeness within us. So we're evolving because technology is evolving with us, but we're maintaining kind of this humanness within us. And that's kind of what I want to see in the artisanal space.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I feel like not that many people are talking about making artisanal techniques and products modern. But that is like, it makes so much sense. Because I think about it all the time. I'm like, it's so cool seeing all of these new either like preferred materials coming out or like biomaterials coming out. But also it's like there are so many great natural fibers that exist, and there are so many cool first people techniques out there as well that have lasted ages and that are like super sustainable and sometimes even regenerative. But I feel like, we don't really see that as a potential, like I don't think it's seen as cool. It's not seen as something that can be innovated within, but it's like the materials itself is super regenerative and like would really, really help make the fashion industry sustainable.
Yeah, I think you touched upon a very interesting point here, that it's not seen cool, and I totally agree with that. And I also think one point of view why is it not considered cool is the amount of effort it takes to work with the artisanal space, because we need to work with nature, we need to work with their pace, we need to work with their understanding, their principles. So if a brand is in another part of the world, to be able to interact with this space and this collective, it gets harder. But there is this artisan centric brand which does organic dyes, for anyone who's listening here, called VR Carl. It's located in northern India, and I know a few brands that work with it. Also a Portuguese brand is working with them. So it's like more of these collectives which have younger founders that have access to internet and Instagram, and they're able to bridge that gap between a brand and the artisanal space. I think that also helps keep it healthy. There's another collective that I know in India called Saheli Women. They also work with a lot of, I think, American brands around this space, and they also do like a lot of handmade natural dyes, natural hand-woven clothing with organic cotton and materials such as that. So yeah, I think these are two cool collectives. Someone interested in this industry should just check out.
Yeah, that does sound really interesting. I also met a couple of manufacturers, like one in Kenya, that can still do like the traditional bead weaving and stuff, but in like very modern streetwear pieces, which was quite a cool juxtaposition to see. It was a cool name. I wish I could have taken notes or like had business cards out here to have for the calls so that I could remember everyone's names. It was something like Sarah or Saka or something like that. I'll tag it below after. But even that, like going to like just using highly skilled people is great. And there was other people talking about how each country kind of has its own skill within the textile industry, and kind of maximizing what that could be would be another great way to make the industry more sustainable. And this came up in a talk to do with the new EU policy around textiles and stuff. And it was kind of talking about how, so like the fashion industry doesn't have a seat at the table in Brussels where these EU policies are being made. And there was an awesome speaker from the All Foundation who was on the talk, and she was saying how she's based in Ghana, and in the market down there, in the Kantamanto market, there are 30,000 people working there. And I think it was something like 15 million tons of clothing gets delivered. I think it was every week. And they can't decide what gets delivered. It's just like it gets delivered. And like usually 40% of that is just trash. Like it can't be repaired. But she was saying how all of these people are so skilled at repairing the clothes and then reselling them locally. But there's like this like odd, like white savior view where it's like, we're better. They don't know how to deal with these clothes. We need to go and solve it and everything. But she was saying like, no, like these people are super highly skilled. They know what they're doing. Like this is their industry now because you're forcing it upon them. But like these people should be in the talks with the EU doing these policy changes because they're really fucking affected by it and they're not taking into account. And another interesting thing was like, this EU policy only focuses on like 5% of all brands. Like 95% of fashion brands in the EU are small to medium sized enterprises, and this policy just doesn't affect them. So it's like, okay, it's kind of cool that like they've done a policy, but it's really only targeting the top 5%, and it's also not taking into account the people in the supply chain. So it's like completely unjust, and it's not helping to get to a just and fair, socially equitable and environmentally sustainable industry. And I think that was super great that they had a stage and a platform to talk about that, because it's true, like everything seems so siloed, and it's great having the talks where it's like, okay, as an industry we need to come together and like work together. But even in the talks, like I witnessed so many arguments going on between like panelists and like the guest speakers, and it was like, wow, like this is crazy. Like there was a full-blown fight between the organic certification and then like these guys who I follow and personally really love their activism work to do with regenerative agriculture and stuff. And so it was really cool to see them in the fashion space, because usually they just do farming. But the organic guy was like, you're lying, regenerative agriculture uses all these chemicals and pesticides and you're just making it up. And I was like, I'm pretty sure, unless my education was wrong, I'm pretty sure that regenerative agriculture is better because its sole focus is caring for soil health and everything. But the organic guy was like, and there was just so much butting heads. And it was like, we're supposed to all be working together to make the world more sustainable. Why are you having like this weird, like nitpicky fight in front of like, I don't know if it was hundreds, but several, like maybe 60, 70 people. And also it was recorded. Yeah. Like, it was so bizarre. And it was a whole talk about regenerative agriculture. So anyway, I went on a huge tangent there, but my brain was just like, I feel like I haven't been able to like get it out because everybody else had talk.
No, I think that's amazing. I think that's amazing you mentioned that, because it touched so close that we in the sustainable space, we don't have any true answers. And you touched upon the right answer there. Is because we're not bringing the people who are actually doing the groundwork to the table. We're all sitting up here and we're saying, do this and do this, but really the people who are here know the best. They know the lay of the land. So we're not bringing those people who are the farmers in the regenerative agriculture space versus organic versus virgin material space, and bringing them together. And actually, I've seen this firsthand as well, where I've gone and spoken to a lot of farmers. So I went to a farm near this place that I'm living recently. It was 1 year back, and they were growing vegetables to sell. And then they had this small patch, which was for them. And the small patch was the organic patch. And the whole other space was just chemicals and vegetables. And I said, well, that means that you know that it's not good for your health, right? That's why you have this organic patch just for you. Yeah. So their answer to me was, yeah, but if you don't put pesticides and chemicals on the rest, one, we need to make a lot more effort to manage the farm. Second, we don't get any additional money to make organic farming, because third, the middlemen take the money. So of course, like they're like trying to feed themselves monthly, and you're asking them to grow organic. That's not a solution. It's not a solution in any way, because you don't understand. You need to incentivize them, work with these farmers, develop incentives that helps them get their monthly fees, so they're growing for the whole world. So I think this is the whole challenge. And also personally, I'm not a fan of certifications. They're not an end all be all. They're just a stage one. I recently I'd done a webinar. Yeah, I'd done a webinar on cotton recently, and I found I'm an ambassador at Remakes, I found a contact for BCI Cotton to ask them about something really dodgy.
Oh yeah.
She'll come on a call with me, and it's been 2 months, and I followed up 5 times and completely ghosted me.
Oh, so if you get on a call, can you let me know? Because I have many thoughts about BCI.
Yeah, let's see, because she's completely ghosted me, so I'm gonna go back and see if that's gonna be a dead end, or I should keep poking in the bear there, or she's at a space where she can't put any controversy, so she's just ignoring
so true. Right? Yeah, because I think they got some bad press recently too, so that would make sense if she's not pushing anymore.
Yeah, so I get why two spaces are arguing with each other, but also we should be working together. But hard when we don't have a end-all be-all truth. We're all just learning and growing in this space, and we all have our own experiences. Some have their own agenda to it as well. Some have other incentives going, but I would say as long as we're all trying to go in the right direction, even if we argue and find our way, it's better than sitting there. So I want to actually go and see that podcast, or if it's available online, to see what's the conclusion of it.
I think it comes out in like 3 weeks' time. It was Regenerative Agriculture Focus Positive Impacts. That was the title of the talk on the first day. But yeah, crazy. I think, like you were saying, subsidies, I have a lot of thoughts about this just then. I'm trying to remember like which way. So yeah, I think subsidies obviously don't help make the world more sustainable currently. So those, I think, definitely need to change in favor of regenerative agriculture and maybe organic agriculture as well. But obviously that both of those are better than the conventional. So boost those, stop subsidizing chemicals and pesticides and stuff, and fertilizers. And then the other thing was about the policy. Like, most people don't even have a common definition around sustainability. Like, the policymakers don't seem to have one. That was something that came up in the talks as well. And it's kind of crazy to think about. Like, how is this still the case that there's not a common definition? But I think that actually is probably quite a big root cause as to why there's a lot of inaction around this, because nobody can decide what the common outcome is. So yeah, those thoughts came up. And then there was a third one that came up also while you were talking, which is, have you heard of Matera?
No.
So they are, I literally found out about them 2 days ago, but they're a collective, I think, of farmers, regenerative farmers in India, growing regenerative cotton. I think that's their focus. They might have other things. I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but their co-founder was a part of this talk as well, and was super interesting, super engaging, like had a very clear level-headed opinion, but clearly was still opinionated on the topic. But they seem to have a super cool initiative out in India.
I'm definitely check that out.
Check it out.
I think you also touched upon another thing there that was interesting about Ghana, and there is a super famous video on that's been around for an year, exactly explaining what you said.
Oh yeah,
about dump loathing. So yeah, if you Google it, landfills in Ghana, I think you'll see that video pop up. And I think that also relates to the fact that we need the EPR.
Yes,
because without
absolutely.
EPR, a lot of these textiles are getting dumped in third world countries because no one's responsible for them. There are no laws, there are no protections. So I'm very curious to see how the EPR pans out, because actually, even if it does, the recycling centers are not well equipped to actually sort out fabric and leave them from landfill. So I also don't know, because I was recently at a talk in Portugal, which one of them was a founder of one of these recycling spaces in Portugal. I'm forgetting the name. I think it was called Recycle or something like that. Like super easy to remember.
Yeah.
But basically, she was telling us how a lot of fabrics cannot be sorted out, and also natural fabrics, if they're dyed with chemicals, that also makes them unavailable to reuse, and there's not much innovation in the space to find that out. So I'm very curious to understand, even with the EPR, what happens next. I wonder if there was any...
Yeah, that's completely my fault for not... I was just saying policy broadly, but yeah, so EPR is extended producer responsibility, for those people listening who may not know that. Yeah, that was literally like the main topic of conversation. I just went straight to policy and pointed out. But yeah, they were like, yes, we need EPR so that there's like a just, sustainable fashion industry, because yeah, how are you going to get it otherwise, basically? That seemed to be the gist. I'm sure there was a lot more nuance to it, but that was the key takeaway. This is very much needed, and it will be interesting to see how the industry shift with this new EPR in place.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are at this stage very curious about what happens next. I think some of us are curious, some of us are optimists, some of us are pessimists. Some of us know more, so they have a right to be more pessimistic. So I think it's
Yeah, I get that. I am such a big proponent for being optimistic and positive, because otherwise there's no, like, what's the impetus and motivation to do more and to continue working in this space if you're just pessimistic? You're like, yeah, nothing's going to fucking happen. Like, why then have like the desire to work? So yeah, that's my view.
Yeah, I would say that's my view too, because I mean, I chose to be in this space, so no one put me into it. So I chose to be no matter what.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, this is literally voluntary. We chose to be here. It's so true. But when you're talking about dyes, I saw a super cool company, and I'm definitely going to research it and tag them because I rushed by it. It was in the center of the stage, but they recycle dyes. So they figured out how to take the dye out of the fabric in like the post-consumer instance and extract it and then re-dye other garments with it. And I was like touching it and feeling it, and it looked great. And I think that that's quite an interesting angle because at the moment so much is wasted in the dye space and they're so toxic and so bad. And so I'd be interested to do more research to know like if you're able to recycle them in a closed loop, like what's the percentage of waste that's still generated when the dyes are recycled. But I think that that was quite an interesting innovation because like you say, like there's not that many innovations going on in the dye space other than like figuring out how to like completely remove dyes. So it was quite cool to see this kind of reuse going on.
Yeah. There's a company who's doing something similar. I think I saw this post on LinkedIn. Again, there's so much happening that my brain is
hard. It's
not
hard to remember all the names.
Yeah. I need a pencil. Anyone who knows Harry Potter will know you mean here. Literally. But do you know about this company called Algaing or Algaing? What are they doing? Something? Not sure, but this is a really cool innovation. I also want to figure out about this. Was it in an MVP stage or they're already in market? What is their...
I'm just, here we go. I got it. Okay, they're called, I was scanning through my photos. Oh, that was it. Okay, so it was by De Montfort University and Loughborough University, 2 universities in the UK. And so it was the recycling and recovery of dyes through enzyme-based biotechnologies. I don't know if you can... But like they're pretty pigmented.
So wait, what is done here? They've already removed the dyes out of the fabric.
And then this, I think, is them reprinted onto wool. Yeah, wool printed fabric with recovered dyes.
Oh, that looks awesome.
Yeah. So actually, maybe they are still at the like innovation stage.
If anyone's interested in investing and they have any investment going on, I think this would be a good opportunity.
Super cool, right? Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, that I think is awesome. I wonder if there are other spaces doing this because this is a innovation worth watching for, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I know about like I worked with Wearable previously and they were there as well. And I know that they created a technology to be able to grow fibers with dyes naturally within the protein structure, which is super cool. But that's like a
how do you even do that?
Material technology, and they're still in the innovation stage. So I know that there's like those that in my world, like that's the spectrum that I've seen so far. There's like the post-consumer and then there's like the before it's even been made. And so you're avoiding all because it's inherent.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think there's such cool stuff happening. I wonder what will last and what won't last. Because actually, I was part of this real circularity summit that I know we saw. I don't know if you just joined that. Did you?
I didn't. I was so gutted to miss it. I think I was literally traveling to London that day. I wasn't at home, super sadly. But yeah, you know.
So there was someone from, I think there was the CEO from Rennes, the famous H&M backed company for innovative fibers. I don't know if you heard about them, but bankruptcy recently, a few months back. NewCell.
Yes. Yeah.
So she was on there explaining what happened, and I finally understood. I finally understood a lot of things, why innovations fail and what really happens in that space. So she kind of took us through the stages, and one basic thing that she said was it took around like 600 million to build the plant, the manufacturing unit to create that cellulose technology, basically. And then they had to go to market because they had to recover all of this money, right, from investors and backing and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of brands gave them the promise that, yes, we would work with you. But the challenge that they had was they didn't pay them in advance. They wanted the product maybe in the future. They wanted it based on demand, forecast. So this was one challenge that they were not able to get the funding and they went bankrupt. The second reason that I saw was brands also wanted just the end product. So they were providing this technology, but it needed to be blended with other fibers and then created into clothing and things like that. But brands just wanted the end product. So this consumer behavior model that we have, kind of a fast fashion where we just want the products immediately, caused a challenge for them. So it's also interesting that if you scale big and you don't have that market that's directly going to punch back the money in, no matter how innovative you are, how will you survive long term? And also was interesting for me that I didn't see any aspect on what happens 3 years later with this fabric? Like, how does it decompose? There's new fabrics and new solutions also need some time and space, right, to understand what happens. Because when plastic came into the market, my parents tell me that it was marketed as the sustainable option because they didn't want to cut wood. This is how it was marketed as, that it's more sustainable because you're not causing deforestation. But no one back then said it. But hey, put it in earth and it won't disintegrate for maybe 400 years. So
yeah, probably longer.
Yeah,
No one's been alive for 400 years to know that it takes 400 years.
yeah, I wonder what my children or another generation will be talking about us, because this is what it is in this space. We really don't know what in 100 years down the line.
Yeah, there's like our society isn't set up for like the preventative research. Like nobody researches things really and then makes sure that it's good for the planet and then launches it. That was the case with like nylon and plastic and stuff like that. But also I think these new technologies, everyone, like you were saying, everyone expects everything so instantly because of fast fashion and other things. Just like, yeah, we want everything so fast. It's convenient, it's snappy, like everything's instantaneous in the digital age. But looking back at all these other, like plastic, like taken years to develop and years to get to market and scale and everything. And nobody's given that same leniency with these new textiles and new innovations.
Yeah, I think it's a collective thing that we're all facing based on the state of things in a pair. And I think just some things take time to come into fruition. And in some ways, we're going back as well, because when it comes to regenerative cotton, that's how we grew it. And then they introduced pesticides. My parents also told me this, by the way, that they reintroduced pesticides and chemicals because they told us low effort is good for everyone. But then later on, we realized the way we were doing farming was actually the way that we should have done all along, with like animals in the space, with other crops going around. There was not monocrops. So it's kind of, that's why I like the artisan space as well, because we should use traditions and history and take the positive of it and then innovate alongside it and not forget our history completely, because a lot of lessons and a lot of rituals and traditions that we did back then had value because we were living with nature. We were not disconnected as we are today.
Absolutely. And nature's so hyper local and location specific. So that history and those stories from those places is what works. So trying to bring in all of these other things is just, I think it's criminal, especially in India. Like I was watching the Vandana Shiva documentary. I think it's just called The Seeds of Vandana Shiva. And she was going into the history of pesticides and how it came, but also like the absolute like devastating effects it had when they were imported from the US and then sold in the markets. Like it completely just displaced the farmers' way of doing things, then also made it way, way, way uneconomical to use anything other than these new chemicals, which then results in suicide and awful, awful things like that.
Yeah. And these are all actual real life problems still happening, and I'm sure in other third world countries as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. But that's I enjoyed the documentary. She's a proper force for good.
I'm definitely gonna add that to watch.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, this is great actually. It came out free. It's now free. I think it might be up on YouTube free because I bought it.
Yeah.
I was so looking forward to it coming out. I'd like waited for it to come out and then it came out and I forgot about it and I was like, oh, okay, you know what? It's been so many months now. I'm just going to sit down. I'm going to watch it. And so I bought it and then literally the following week it came out free and I was like, look, good. I mean, glad that I supported them. I gave them money. I would have donated money for the cause anyway, but I was like, it's just funny how that happened. So yeah, it's now out free. You can find it free somewhere.
I think you were meant to do that donation.
Yeah, literally.
Within you unconsciously was like, you have to donate to this.
Yeah, I love this cause. God.
And then you paid forward to me who gets to watch it for free.
Exactly. Now you get to watch it for free. That's fun. Yeah, it probably wouldn't have been on my radar otherwise.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go give it a watch.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I reckon, is there anything you want to say before we wrap up? Like any leaving thoughts?
I think my leaving thoughts would just be what we were discussing, is to stay curious, stay optimistic, and don't ever assume that you know the complete truth when it comes to sustainability. Keep following this philosophy and you'll keep growing and keep making an impact in the space. That's what I personally believe, and I've seen a lot of growth in my journey in the last few years based on this mindset, and also seen other people have this similar growth mindset. Let's call it growth mindset. But to wrap it up, and yeah, keep following Isabel. I think she's an amazing person and she's going to do some amazing things.
Likewise, feed. Follow Payal. She's awesome. Doing super, super cool things. I love your work. So thank you so, so, so much for joining. This has been great. Really loved our chat. Hopefully we can do another one soon.
Sounds good. And enjoy Paris.
Thanks. Yeah, have fun back in India.
Thank you. And hoping to see you soon